Welcome to another episode of the Swamp247 Podcast. I'm your host, Graham Hall, joined once again by Jacob Rudner, and it is here, folks. Florida's SEC opener has arrived right around the corner. The Gators take on Texas A&M on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in the Swamp. And if you were watching on Saturday, which I know a lot of people were, and maybe some people certainly weren't, considering the way Florida's season opening loss went to the Miami Hurricanes, you know that DJ Lagway put on an absolute show on Saturday, albeit against the Samford Bulldogs. Got to make sure we get that out of the way right off the bat, because that has certainly been a point of the discussion here during the game and in the aftermath, the level of competition that DJ Lagway and the Gators were facing. But Jacob, we'll jump right into it. It was a historic performance for DJ Lagway. I know that expectations were certainly high for this quarterback. The Willis, Texas native has been under the radar, under the microscope, absolutely, since he got to Gainesville. The number one quarterback in the 2024 class got here in January and started taking second team reps with the Gators pretty much from the jump, despite Florida adding a more experienced signal caller to the roster in Clay Millen out of Colorado State. And I think that spoke to Lagway's potential, absolutely. And Billy Napier has said time and time again that they needed to have him ready to perform, just given that Graham Mertz was coming off an injury, and that if you have a quarterback go down, you need to have someone able to step right in and be able to take over your offense without not allowing it to miss a beat. And I think that was certainly a little bit, that's understating the conversation here. I think that Florida's offense was absolutely magnificent with DJ Lagway leading the way on Saturday. We're going to just start with your impressions of his performance. What stood out to you aside from the bevy of impressive throws downfield that he was able to do as a freshman quarterback, given the circumstances? Again, the opponent certainly matters here, but just what stood out to you from DJ Lagway's first performance with the Gators here on Saturday?
I mean, I would say that everything stood out in DJ Lagway's debut as a starting quarterback at the University of Florida. His ability to throw the ball deep was incredible. Florida had completed 15 passes for 40-plus yards over the previous two seasons combined under Billy Napier. DJ Lagway hit 5 of those passes in one night. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who will say, well, he faced an FCS opponent. That should be the expectation. The reality is that Florida has faced FCS teams under Napier prior to that game, and no other quarterback, be it Anthony Richardson or Graham Mertz, have been able to accomplish what it was DJ Lagway did. No quarterback in the country has thrown for more yards in a single game so far this season, and there are plenty of teams that have faced, outmatched competition. No quarterback has surpassed DJ Lagway's 456 passing yards. That destroyed the Florida record for single-game passing yards by a true freshman. He threw 3 touchdowns. He was not sacked once. His ability to have feel in the pocket and precision and touch and sense pressure coming without having to necessarily look at it, just his ability to really feel the timing of a football play is unbelievable. And I wrote something earlier this week where I basically said it's rare for 5-star status or a top 5 ranking to be apparent or to be reflected in one play or one tackle or one pass. But I would argue that there were several plays, individual plays, throughout that game where DJ Lagway showed what it was like and what it looks like to be a true 5-star, generational talent, because that is what that is at 24/7 Sports. If you are a high 5-star like he was, you are considered the best of the best. And he certainly looked that way. I think that throw to Aiden Mizell, 41 yards for a touchdown in the third quarter, was one of the best throws I've ever seen at the college level. The precision and the power without having his feet under him and a solid base was impressive for any quarterback, let alone a true freshman in his first career start. So all of this was a very long-winded way of saying that this is a truly impressive player, somebody who has an incredibly bright future. And I would go as far as to say, if things continue to travel on the expected trajectory for a guy like DJ Lagway, he could be a several $100 million quarterback at the NFL level for a very long time. The raw talent is extremely apparent, and it's a matter of development at this point because the sky is the limit. And again, I will reiterate, it does not matter to me that it was against an FCS opponent. There are things that you can see that a player does on his own that, exist in a vacuum, so to speak, and have nothing really to do with an opponent. And he put several of those things on display. So, phenomenal debut. Not a single bone to pick. I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, Elijah Badger got involved with a 77-yard catch that looked like he was going to score before he got caught up to there. We talked to him yesterday, and he said that he was a little disappointed that he wasn't able to find the end zone there. But still, that marks Badger's longest reception in his career, and he was extremely productive at Arizona State. Lagway connected to Hayden Hansen for a 40-plus yard reception as well. Tank Hawkins had his first touchdown and his first reception as a Gator. And then you mentioned the one by Mizell. That's, I think, a good description and I think example of the opponent that Florida was facing, because it's Samford, but look at the coverage there on that play. Aiden Mizell is arguably the fastest player, certainly in the top two from what we've heard on Florida's roster. And he barely had a step ahead of the defender right there. It was a perfect throw, an off-balance perfect throw from DJ Lagway, and it was extremely impressive. And certainly I think I said on that one at the time on social media that was the most excited the Swamp had been early on this season. Again, it only been a game and a half, 6 quarters, but the Miami game, Florida was not at its best from an environment standpoint, of course, because of the way that game devolved there. And they certainly needed something to be excited about. And you mentioned DJ Lagway's impressive future. I know Florida fans are certainly hoping that what you saw on Saturday was just the beginning of a storied collegiate career for that guy, because it was incredibly impressive. If there's any downside to it in any way whatsoever, I had said this to a couple people ahead of time, that the only potential negative of DJ Lagway coming up and lighting up the opposition was that you'd have this pseudo quarterback controversy, so to speak, with Graham Mertz out. And I think that has really been what the storyline for the last couple of days has been, and in the aftermath of Florida's contest with Samford, just pretty much from the jump right after the Gators won that game and Billy Napier was speaking to the media, he was asked about the potential of DJ Lagway taking over as Florida's starting quarterback, even though 6-year quarterback Graham Mertz was expected to make his return imminently to Florida's roster. He suffered a concussion against Miami, was going through the protocol in the week leading up to Samford. And from what we've heard, he is back. He had one final step to be cleared, according to Billy Napier, on Monday, and he did clear that final step. The expectation is that he's going to continue to practice fully ahead of the contest with Texas A&M. And Napier, quite to, I think, the ire of several Florida football fans, came out and said that Graham Mertz is our starting quarterback. But with that said, DJ Lagway is going to have a role moving forward. It is, I think, remains to be seen just how much they're going to use him. And that's certainly going to be, I think, one of the key areas of focus against the Aggies, especially if Florida's offense struggles in similar fashion to the way they did against the Hurricanes. It kind of, I think, has raised questions too from a standpoint of how ready DJ Lagway is, because I asked Billy Napier about the game management aspect, what more he would like to see from Lagway. And while he said that he was extremely impressed with everything that he did, there are certainly some things that he can continue improving upon. I know it may not have appeared that way when he was 27 yards shy of having the most passing yards in a game in Florida program history, but this is a freshman quarterback who can still improve, which is certainly encouraging for Florida fans who want to see this guy reach his true potential. But it may speak to the overall hesitance of Billy Napier to throw a guy like that in the proverbial fire against an SEC foe after just one start, when you have an experienced quarterback that, while he did struggle against Miami, is coming off an incredibly productive season of his own, where he nearly had 3,000 passing yards, nearly had a top 10 passing season in Florida program history. He had just 3 interceptions. Yes, he had a poor performance against Miami, but how much of that was actually his fault? Were you surprised to hear from Billy Napier that DJ Lagway would not be even considered as the starting quarterback going into that game, or just the fact that Mertz was dealing with an injury and there is a notion that you're not going to take a starting job away from a guy when they're injured? Maybe a little bit of a reason why Billy Napier would be hesitant to come out and say this is going to be our starter? Or do you think also, I guess I should ask, that Billy Napier is maybe downplaying just how much we could see DJ Lagway against the Aggies?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to make clear, Billy has not actually said yet, Graham Mertz is our starter. He has not been explicit in naming a starting quarterback ahead of Florida's matchup with Texas A&M. He has implied it, and rather heavily so, I should add. I think that you don't really need to be a rocket scientist to read between the lines when you listen to what Billy has to say about, we're going to do what we intended. He said repeatedly throughout the preseason that this is, quote, Graham Mertz's team. And if it is his team and they're going to do what they intended, then those two things together mean that he plans to start Graham Mertz. Again, has he said that? No. But, unless he's, playing some high-level gamesmanship here, and it's really not that high level, if we're being honest, unless he's trying to play games, he has said that Graham Mertz is the starting quarterback effectively. That being said, I think that there is some validity to the sentiment that you don't want to take away somebody's starting job because they got hurt. Graham Mertz technically hasn't done anything wrong. However, I will point to the Miami game where he basically completed just over 50% of his passes, had 91 passing yards, and couldn't find the end zone. It was an ugly performance. The only touchdown Florida scored with Graham Mertz on the field was a Montrell Johnson 71-yard rush. That was a total outlier of a play in that contest. So Mertz was not exactly off to a hot start. Again, Napier's had a lot of conviction that Mertz is their starting quarterback. He has basically made it clear that he views Mertz as this ultimate game leader who's already had a lot of success in Florida's offense, and that's true. He was very successful in 2023. But, there does come times where one quarterback is so obviously well suited for a situation, like I think DJ Lagway is for this one, that you're kind of forced into making a change. And I also think it's important to note that Florida's football program is not in a comfortable or good spot right now. The Miami loss put Billy Napier way into a corner. It's very clear how this fan base feels at this point. And it's almost as if DJ Lagway is this life preserver for Billy Napier to latch onto as something of a last-ditch effort here. Lagway is so supremely talented, like I said earlier, and granted, yes, it was against much lower-level competition, and he's now going to have to repeat that success against markedly better opponents. But I think given Florida's offensive line situation, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, you have to go with the more athletic, even if it's raw, the more athletic guy at the most important position on the field. And I think that between, Lagway's athleticism and his ability to deliver a deep ball in a way that I just don't think Mertz can do, it really should be Lagway's job. I don't think that's what we'll see. Billy Napier has made that, as clear as he seemingly will, that's not going to happen. But I think that it's pretty obvious who should be starting at quarterback for the Florida Gators at this point.
Yeah, I mentioned this as well. All due respect to Graham Mertz, but I do think it is pretty obvious who gives the Gators the best chance at being explosive on offense and scoring quickly. I do think that is another factor that maybe is missed in the discussion. Florida's defense was quite porous last season, and they would often have to then turn to their offense to rally from behind. And Florida's offense was not well equipped last year at scoring quickly. You saw a lot of 10, 11 play drives that took up 5-6 minutes of game time. And what DJ Lagway was consistently able to do was strike on the second, third play, even the first play of the drive. And Florida was able to score quickly and utilize the speed that they have absolutely vouched for as being a strength of this team that maybe you didn't see a ton last season. That is, I think, another factor that has been maybe lost a little bit in the conversation. If the Gators get down in a game, who is more well-equipped to lead you on a drive and answer quickly? It definitely, to me, appears to be DJ Lagway. And again, this is no disrespect to Graham Mertz, because I do think that he has been highly touted as a game-managing quarterback. He has good command of the offense. He is certainly a leader within the Florida locker room. That has been something that is consistently expressed by Florida teammates and coaches alike. And give him the credit for the fact that DJ Lagway is where he is. I know that you often want to say that the quarterback has done this all on their own and they're a generational talent and they have all these tools for success, but Napier has made it clear really since December that Graham Mertz's decision to return to Florida for his final season of collegiate football is the best thing that could have happened to DJ Lagway. And when asked about that as well on Saturday, we got to talk to DJ Lagway for the first time since he's been in Gainesville. You can read his full quotes over at Swamp247 if you want to hear more from Florida's freshman star quarterback. I think we can call him now. He basically affirmed that and said that Graham has been monumental in his development over the last 8 months. He's helped him nail down all the aspects of the in-between, how to handle practice, how to carry yourself at a collegiate program. This is stuff that is absolutely valuable for freshmen, not even just freshmen, but underclassmen who are looking to take on a larger role, getting leadership from veterans. So you have to, I think, give Graham Mertz that, I think, intangible necessarily that is probably being evaluated by Billy Napier and the coaching staff. DJ Lagway wouldn't be where he is right now, as far along as he is, if it wasn't for the presence of Graham Mertz. And that alone is part of why I think he is still very highly regarded within the Florida program, even if it is clear to the coaching staff that DJ Lagway is the more talented quarterback and has the higher ceiling on offense. It is certainly something that is going to be evaluated, I believe, on a week-to-week basis after we see how each quarterback performs. If Lagway struggles at any point or he throws some errant passes and is picked off, I do think you'll see Florida also, on the flip side of this, go back more to Graham Mertz a little bit more, just knowing that what we talked about, this was a guy who avoided turnovers at a high rate last year, and that's something that Florida can't really afford. You mentioned the offensive line, and I'm glad that we brought this up because I do think that's another massive part of the discussion that I want to get your take on. Coaches love to say time and time again that quarterbacks may get too much of the credit and they may get too much of the blame because so much of the success for both Mertz and Lagway has to do with the state of Florida's offensive line. You saw repeatedly in that contest with Miami that Graham Mertz was under duress. He was pressured in the backfield. The right side of the offensive line struggled to deal with the speed off the edge on a consistent basis. And that is ultimately what got him knocked out of the game, taking a shot there at the end of the third quarter where Florida just struggled to pass block for more than 1 second. So what we saw, again, it's against Samford, we got to keep that in mind, was that DJ Lagway looks like he is more adept at being able to overcome the issues along Florida's offensive line. He's quicker at getting out of the pocket. He's still able to throw 40, 50-yard passes downfield, even when he's off balance, even when he's on the run, having to step in and make a quick throw, can't really go through his ideal mechanics. Do you agree with the sentiment that maybe this freshman, given his athleticism, his skill set, his physical attributes, is a little bit more equipped to handle the current state of Florida's offensive line, which Billy Napier said on Monday, much to, I think, the ire of a lot of Florida fans out there, after 8 months of trying to find the best unit, but they're still trying to find the ideal starting five to run with against the Aggies and moving forward. Do you agree with the assessment that DJ Lagway is a little bit more equipped to handle what Florida's offensive line is currently able to do? Because I got to just say, I think that is absolutely a significant factor here in this conversation because the guy really didn't have much problems with pressure. He didn't look uncomfortable. His confidence didn't drop. He was able to evade and not really get hit at a high rate. Yeah, he took a hard hit there in the second quarter, but that was on the run when he was looking to scramble and make something happen. When it comes to being able to still manage the game plan, it looked clear as day to me against Samford that DJ Lagway is more equipped to be able to overcome the current issues along Florida's offensive line. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's a little bit more, we need to see a little bit more of a body of work for Graham Mertz against a team that's not Miami here?
I mean, let's just talk about, well, first of all, yeah, that's what I was saying a second ago. I think that DJ Lagway is obviously better suited for the problems that Florida's offensive line has. I'm going to talk about these problems for just a second because I think that it bears mention on the podcast here and to get on the record my thoughts on this offensive line. This is it's just to call it as it is. This is embarrassing. I mean, Florida has had plenty of opportunities, be it via the portal or high school recruiting, to better stock its offensive line now 3 years into the Billy Napier era. And I think that this line is in a competitive state with their 2023 group for as bad as that unit was. That was an outside the top 100 teams in the FBS offensive line. This one will be very close to that. That Florida has so many issues up front, from just inadequate play at left guard, for example. Najee Harris has struggled even against Samford, especially in run blocking, but pass protecting has been ugly. Damian George had the opposite struggles at the opposite guard spot. He's been reasonably good, actually, in pass protection, but if you watch the game tape, he looks terrible in run blocking. Florida has nobody at the moment who can adequately play right tackle. Cameron Waits has been a disaster so far this season, and Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon has struggled as well. And then you have two guys in Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber who are playing quite well, especially Barber, who's now been Florida's best offensive lineman by grade from PFF for 2 straight weeks. And he plays the fewest snaps out of any of Florida's starting offensive linemen, and fewer than Cameron Waits against Samford, who didn't even start. So this unit it's in my mind, it's probably Billy Napier's biggest failure since, taking over the job in Gainesville in 2022, is that they really do not have an adequate offensive line. I think previously Florida kind of put on a brave face in its public comments about the unit. And now I'm sure even fans have noticed that that's stopped. Billy Napier has started to become much more open and honest about the fact that they do have problems up front. They should not be rotating in 10 guys to figure out who their best lineup is in the second game of the season. It is only a marker of the fact that the unit is well below average across the board. And so there are, here's the problem for Florida. You can't trade for players. Billy Napier has said before, this is not the NFL. And while we have the transfer portal, which is our free agency, we can't supplement our roster via trades or in-season free agency. And if that's the case, Florida has who it has, and it's not sufficient. So to counterbalance it, and I'm going to write about this later on this week for Swamp247.com, and I recommend you check that out because it'll be a lot more detailed. But you have to there's got to be fixing somewhere, and it can't occur along the offensive line. So the next best thing is putting in a quarterback who's going to be able to hold his own a little bit behind, an offensive line that's just simply not going to protect adequately against high-level opponents, because it barely did against, Samford. So, I think that it's Florida's biggest problem this year, and I think that the only real way it has an opportunity to give itself a chance to fix that, to get beyond it, is by having DJ Lagway playing the majority, if not all of the reps at quarterback, even, again, if that comes at the expense of having an experienced signal caller out there, which, of course, Lagway is not. But yeah, to answer your question, I do think, just given what I just said about the offensive line, you have to balance things out. And I don't think that Graham Mertz has the skill set. It's not a knock against him. I just don't think he has the same skill set as Lagway, which is going to be better suited to survive, basically, behind an offensive line that is going to do no favors for whichever player is at quarterback.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate because so many people are knocking Graham Mertz as someone who doesn't have the ability to be explosive downfield. And I certainly understand that argument. I don't think he has nearly as strong of a powerful arm as DJ Lagway. I think that's pretty clear as day, but he often doesn't have time in the pocket for the play to develop downfield. Not saying that DJ Lagway had enormous time, absolutely, but he was able to get outside the pocket. I would say he didn't. He didn't.
Sorry to interrupt you. I would say he had no time, even against Samford. And a lot of his best plays, as you and I just talked about, again, sorry to interrupt you there, but a lot of his best plays were under duress. He was making plays with his legs and then his superstar arm. The pass to Elijah Badger, he was way outside the pocket before delivering a strike down the field. The pass to Tank Hawkins, he was moving around. The pass to Aiden Mizell was literally thrown off a foot as he was getting hit at the line of scrimmage. So, I think that it is evident what is this offensive line is going to provide moving forward. Even against Samford, DJ Lagway's best downfield plays came with his legs at the start of the play. Graham Mertz, as you just said, doesn't have that ability and also doesn't have the pocket to make it happen. And so to me, it's obvious. I really do believe, to me, it's obvious who should be starting at quarterback at Florida right now. And to be clear again, I don't think that's a knock on Mertz. It's a knock on how this coaching staff has prepared this team along the line of scrimmage. It is inadequate. And now they have to essentially take the life preserver, and that is Lagway. It's as clear as day. There's no secret here.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because I do agree, and I know you're writing about this tomorrow. Again, everyone should check that out tomorrow at swamp247.com. But it is a more nuanced conversation than which quarterback is better necessarily, because there are so many factors involved in that. It's which quarterback can handle the current state of Florida's offense right now, and where the offensive line is, the protection up front. In my mind, it is clearly DJ Lagway, because like you just noted, he was still able to make plays downfield, even with a horrible pocket at times. And so, even the one we left out, Florida's longest pass of the game, the shovel pass to Eugene Wilson, the behind the line. I mean, the best blocking there was, from the wideouts there, where he was able to get upfield and make something happen with his sheer athleticism. So having a guy like that and having Lagway, his athleticism, the state of this offensive line, Osiris Torrance isn't walking back through that door. They have a lot of freshmen that I think that they're confident in, but are they ready right now? Guys like Bryce Lovett, Caden Jones, they're going to get a handful of snaps because they're going to rotate here, but can you expect one of those guys to start over your current options? Absolutely not, in my mind. And so Florida's offensive line is what it is. And certainly for Florida fans out there, that is a reason to be upset. Florida has two offensive line coaches that they are paying a combined $1.5+ million. They have brought in tackles from the transfer portal, and no disrespect to Devin Manuel and Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, they have not elevated the group whatsoever. They, I think, would have been better off going in two different directions there this offseason. The returning guy that a lot of people criticized last year in Austin Barber is validating the notion that he was playing injured last year, because you look at his production right now, he is certainly Florida's, in my opinion, one of their top two offensive linemen, as you noted, and he's not playing a ton of snaps. And that may be because there is a significant drop-off behind him at tackle, and they can't afford to have their best offensive tackle get rolled up on against Samford. So this is certainly a situation that is going to be difficult for Florida to overcome the rest of the year. And one of the ways that they can do it is DJ Lagway. Now, with that said, I'm going to put you once more on the spot before we wrap up this episode of the Swamp 247 podcast. I need your prediction for what you think DJ Lagway's role is going to be on Saturday. Or do you think it's, to be determined in the contest against the Aggies, depending on how Mertz fares, depending on how the score shakes out early on in this contest, if Florida needs to rally? Or do you believe they're going to do something similar to what they did with rotating Devin Manuel in for the first game against the Miami Hurricanes, where he gets one out of every 3 series to lead the offense rather than coming in for spot plays, which I think may be the belief that people are thinking when they hear Billy Napier say there's going to be a role for this guy, that he's going to come in select packages. I think that there's a belief that he could come in for select series for Florida. How do you think it's going to shake out on Saturday for the quarterback position for the Gators?
Yeah, I think that regardless of whether it's plays or series, I think that Mertz will handle the majority of Florida's reps at the position. I want to be very clear in this prediction, though. I think that is the wrong decision. I think that it would be a pleasant surprise if Florida were to have even reps, or even to let Lagway lead the charge. I absolutely think that is the way to go. But I'm going to kind of take Billy Napier at his word here. I think that he's sincere in the fact that Graham Mertz will still take the majority of Florida's quarterback reps in this upcoming game. And do I think that can change over time? I would hope that can change over time if it continues to prove that, Lagway is the best to move forward, which is what I think will happen. But for now, it's hard to predict against exactly what Billy Napier is saying. And I don't think that he would put that out there. It's not the kind of guy he is. I don't think he would put it out there that, Mertz was going to be the majority rep shareholder for the Gators if it wasn't true, and lead on his quarterback to believe something that isn't actually the reality.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up gamesmanship earlier, because I do think that is certainly going to be a factor for what DJ Lagway's role is going to be. I don't expect Florida to tip their hand whatsoever before kickoff in this contest. And certainly if the Gators don't balance the rep shares between DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz, even if they win this game against Texas A&M, which I do think is going to come down to how much DJ Lagway is used in this contest, it is only going to make Billy Napier's seat hotter here. And that is quite interesting considering that you have a bona fide star in my mind in the making in DJ Lagway that should give people a lot of confidence moving forward that retaining the coaching staff to retain this quarterback and see what you have in 2025 should be a risk that the Gators may consider making regardless of how the rest of the season goes. So I am fascinated to see how it shakes out on Saturday. People are certainly going to be evaluating the offense under a microscope throughout that contest, and we'll be covering it and following it all over at Swamp247. Before the Gators kick off with the Aggies, we'll have a ton of content. We'll have predictions for the game over there. Make sure you check it out. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Swamp247 podcast. We'll be back later this week to talk with Blake Alderman about the recruiting list that the Gators are going to have in Gainesville. So check that out when it drops as well on all the available streaming platforms that you listen to your podcasts. And for Graham Hall and Jacob Rudner, we'll see you next time.